Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Pan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. US President Donald Trump says all cars shipped to the US starting the 2nd of April will face 25% tariffs. Reports suggest the levy will be imposed on car parts as well. Auto stocks across Europe and Asia slump between 3 to 8%. In India, Tata Motors loses 58,000 crores in market cap in a single day. Indian equities erase initial weakness to trade comfortably in the red for a major part of the session. Sensex and the Nifty gain over 0.5% each. Sources say a note from the Electronics and IT Ministry proposing a 25,000 crore rupee PLI scheme for electronic component manufacturing is likely to be sent to Cabinet shortly, indicate that the government may be flexible about hiking the outlay depending on industry's response. The Indian Defence Ministry signs contracts worth 2,500 crore rupees for advanced anti-tank systems and military vehicles. Government-owned Armoured Vehicle Nigam will account for over 70% of the order book, will supply the NAG anti-tank missile systems. Force Motors and M&M will supply around 5,000 light vehicles for the armed forces. Alibaba launches a new open-source AI model to rival DeepSeek. The multimodal model in Alibaba's Qwen series can process inputs including text, images, audio and video while generating real-time text and natural speech responses, can be deployed on edge services like mobile phones. New York Times reports that the U.S. government agency responsible for administering civilian foreign aid plans to halt the over $1 billion funding to Gavi, the global alliance that provides vaccines and life-saving care to developing nations. Gavi's chief executive says the halt in funding would have a disastrous impact on global health security. A day after announcing a ceasefire and attacking energy infrastructure, both Russia and Ukraine accuse each other of breaking terms. Russian forces launch a mass drone attack on 2 cities in Ukraine, killing over 10 people. Ukraine reports downing 56 of 117 drones launched by Russia. Israel kills at least 25 Palestinians in attacks across Gaza in the past 24 hours. Hamas says its spokesman has been killed in northern Gaza. The Israeli military also continues its assault across the occupied West Bank, raiding a town in North Bethlehem. Prime Minister Modi writes a letter to Bangladesh's chief advisor Mohammad Yunus, wishes him on his country's Independence Day, calls for stronger bilateral relations based on mutual sensitivity to each other's interests and concerns. This is the Prime Minister's first official correspondence with Yunus since the Nobel laureate assumed office after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. Also on the show, the Indian government is all set to foray into the ride-hailing space with Sahkar Taxi, a cooperative-based ride-hailing service which could pose a challenge to Ola and Uber. Union Minister Amit Shah says all profits will go to drivers and not to intermediaries. Well, let's start with the action on the markets. The Wall Street ended the March series on a healthy note, with the Nifty reclaiming the 23,500 mark today. The Nifty and the Sensex gained nearly 0.5%, with banks outperforming. Auto stocks did hit a roadblock, this after US President Donald Trump's tariff announcements. However, for this series, the market snapped its 5-series losing streak to record its biggest gain in a series since September of last year. That's the equity market action. In the currency market, the rupee fell by 8 paise, closing near 85 against the US dollar. US auto tariffs, rising crude oil prices and liquidity constraints weighed on the rupee. So 85.86 is where it 78 is where it finally closed for the day. The big story of the day, top automakers across the world driving with caution as they brace for 25% tariffs on all cars being shipped to the US. President Trump, while making the announcement yesterday, said that tariffs would take back money from foreign countries that have been taking their jobs and wealth. The new tariffs will be imposed post the 2nd of April. Reports suggest the levy will be imposed on car parts as well. So how big is the impact? Well, the US imported $474 billion worth of automotive products in 2024. Mexico is the top supplier of cars to the US, followed by South Korea, Japan, Canada, and Germany. Speaking in the Oval Office, Trump said he expects auto companies to relocate to the US and build new sites or expand existing ones.
For doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country. What we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at.
Well, that's President Trump on the auto tariffs, and the EU and Canada have slammed US's tariffs. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that the bloc will continue to seek negotiated solutions while protecting its economic interests. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called the new tariff announcement a direct attack on Canadian workers. President Trump doubling down following the EU and Canada's reactions. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said that larger levies would be imposed if the two work together, in his words, to harm the United States economically. The tariff also impacted auto stocks across Europe and Asia, falling between 3 to 8% following the news. Sweden's Volvo fell 8.3%. Japan's Mazda lost 6% in trade. French automaker Valeo also clocked losses of about 5%. And back in India, automakers weren't immune to the US tariff announcements either. Shares of Tata Motors, Samvardhana Motherson and Sona BLW declining in trade today. Tata Motors, in fact, saw its market cap shrink by 58,000 crore rupees. Sudarshan is standing by. We swore on what the tariffs could mean for Indian automakers and component makers as well. Sud.
Auto stocks were under pressure in today's trade on the back of announcement by US President. He has announced that he'll impose 25% tariffs on all the cars that are not made in the US. Also, as per reports, tariffs will be imposed on auto parts as well, and these tariffs will be effective April 2. Now, the first up on the list is Tata Motors, which will be impacted by this tariff, and the reason is US is one of the important markets for JLR, which forms nearly 30% of its total volumes. The most important part is JLR does not have production facility in the US, and most of the cars that JLR sells in the US are imported from other countries. And JLR forms nearly 70% of Tata Motors' consolidated revenue, and due to this tariff, its revenue can be impacted by more than 20%. Next up on the list is Samvardhana Motherson. This will not be impacted directly by tariffs, but it supplies auto parts to those automakers which export cars to the US. So here the impact can be seen in the range of 6 to 7%. Now, if US government decides to impose tariffs on auto parts, two major companies that can be impacted are Balkrishna Industries and Sona BLW. For Balkrishna Industries, 17% revenue comes from the US, and for Sona BLW, US contributes nearly 43% to its total revenue for the fiscal. Last in the list is, if US government goes ahead and imposes tariffs on bikes and trucks, then some of the companies which can be impacted in that list are first, Eicher Motors, for which US forms nearly 2 to 3% to its total volumes of Royal Enfield. Second in the list is for Bharat Forge. 40% of standalone revenue comes from North America. And for Ramkrishna Forging, 26% revenue is contributed by North America. So these are some of the companies which might be impacted by the tariffs that are announced by US President Donald Trump.
I feel it's a great opportunity for our parts supplier and for the government, our bureaucrats, to find out, to make a really good offsetting here, and support the local industry for Make in India, and have a good approach to optimize tariffs and even non-tariffs barriers, So I think, frankly, it provides an opportunity to clean lots of things from our system. A clean, straight, transparent approach which benefits India. It's not only America. I think we need to have an overall wholesome perspective to this.
The auto component industry is well established, even though the revenue-wise it's not big, but it is expected to go up drastically in future years. But with this tariff, I don't know how the balancing would happen between India and US, even though there are a lot of trade talks going on between both the countries. And it's necessary that we have to look at our country and our job creations, and we have to balance the tariff system between US and India for sure.
And speaking of tariffs, the government is in active discussion to consider cutting tariffs on key American imports. Sources tell us that the government is undertaking a comprehensive review of the current import categories. However, we learned that no decision has been finalized yet. The government's looking at a whole host of categories, including medical and scientific instruments, cruise ships, aircraft, cars and high-end jewelry. Just to add some perspective, total goods imported by India from the US in calendar year 2024 stood at $35 billion. That's 6.7% higher than the previous year. In a major crackdown on alleged visa fraud, the US Embassy in India has cancelled over 2,000 visa appointments and suspended the accounts linked to it. Officials say the appointments were made by bots and violated the embassy's scheduling policies. This comes amidst the mounting backlog of US visa appointments in India. The Defence Ministry has signed contracts worth 2,500 crore rupees with Armoured Vehicle Nigam, Force Motors and M&M. The deal involves the procurement of anti-tank weapon platforms and light vehicles. AVNL will supply the NAG missile system for 1,800 crore rupees, while Force Motors and M&M will deliver around 5,000 light vehicles. The Defence Ministry also signed a deal with Bharat Forge for the supply of 184 indigenously developed artillery gun systems. The contract, valued at over 4,000 crore rupees, represents 60% of the total procurement program for artillery systems. Hindustan Aeronautics has amended its contract with the Indian Air Force for the delivery of the Tejas light combat aircraft. The contract's value has now been updated to over 6,500 crore rupees due to revisions in the delivery schedule. The original contract signed in 2010 was valued at a little under 6,000 crore rupees. The borrowing calendar for the first half of the next fiscal is out. The government will borrow 8 lakh crore rupees, or 54% of FY26 target, via dated securities. No new tenor bond has been announced. Over 28% of the borrowings will be conducted through 10-year government securities. So that's the borrowing plan made official by the government today. On to CNBC TV's in exclusive, a note from the Electronics and IT Ministry proposing a 25,000 crore rupee PLI scheme for electronic component manufacturing is likely to be sent to the cabinet shortly. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 the government may be flexible in hiking the outlay, and that depends on the industry response. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, it's been a long time in the making. Can we expect the approval to come in shortly?
Well, that's the hope with which METI has floated this cabinet note. It's likely to be put forth before the cabinet for approval. You're right, it's been a long time coming. We've heard a lot of speculation, a lot of reports in terms of the shape, the contours of this PLI scheme. Now, as the name suggests, electronics components, it'll focus on components such as camera modules, such as batteries, such as displays, such as PCBs. And what's important is that it comes on the heel of the spec scheme, which ended in March of 2024. Now, in terms of the outlay, bear in mind, the conversations began, the industry's pitch began at 40,000 crore rupees. However, the figure which now this PLI has arrived at is 25,000 crore rupees. That's what will be going before the cabinet. Important to bear in mind, however, that the government does retain with itself some degree of flexibility, saying that we're going with 25,000 crores now, but at the same time, given it as how the industry had originally sought for 40,000, the government officials are telling us is that there is inherently that sense of flexibility that depending on the response, the government can consider an extension at a later date. That is something that the government is working with. Also, let's bear in mind that this is a scheme which is designed to encourage the ecosystem here in the country. We've already seen a stellar success as far as the mobile PLI is concerned. The hope and aspiration that the government has is that the broader ecosystem also comes here, which lends to greater localization and value addition here in India.
Is the government coming up with another electronics component PLI scheme worth around $3 billion?
This sounds like a question and a cross-examination of a witness in a court. So I would only say that you will have to wait and watch. You will hear about it soon.
Well, we will hear about it soon, says the METI secretary. That's on the component PLI. Shares of NBCC surging in trade today. This after the company signed an MOU with Mahatma Phule Renewable Energy and Infrastructure Technology. As per the agreement, the companies will jointly undertake consultancy, fee-based and redevelopment projects across Maharashtra. The value of the projects are estimated to be 25,000 crores. This marks NBCC's first major foray into redevelopment in the state of Maharashtra. FMCG major HUL has appointed Rajneet Kohli to lead its food business. He will also join the company's management committee. Kohli will assume the role on the 7th of April. He will succeed Shiva Krishnamurthy. In his last role, Rajneet led Britannia as the CEO and executive director. Prime Minister Modi wrote a letter to Bangladesh Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus wishing him on his country's Independence Day. In the letter, the Prime Minister has called for stronger bilateral relations based on mutual sensitivity to each other's interests and concerns. 6 High Court bar associations have issued a joint statement urging Chief Justice of India Sanjeev Khanna to initiate a criminal investigation against Justice Yashwant Verma. The associations have also asked the CJI to revoke the recommendation for Justice Verma's transfer to the Allahabad High Court. The Chief Justice has assured bar leaders that their demands will be considered. The Telangana Assembly has passed a resolution opposing the proposed delimitation of Parliament by constituencies based solely on population. Revanth Reddy, the Chief Minister, said any delimitation exercise should be conducted after extensive consultations with all state governments and political parties. With this, Telangana has become the first state to pass such a resolution. The Tamil Nadu Assembly has passed a resolution against the Waqf Amendment Bill. The resolution urges the centre to completely withdraw the bill. State Chief Minister M.K. Stalin urged, saying that the bid will badly affect the Muslim community, and also accused the government of systematically discriminating against minorities. Tensions flared in Orissa as Congress workers clashed with the police for protesting against the suspension of 14 party MLAs. The workers who were marching towards the assembly were also protesting against the rise in crime against women in the state. The police also resorted to water cannons to disperse the crowd. Several Congress workers sustained injuries during the confrontation. The government is planning to launch a ride-hailing service modelled after Uber and Ola called Sarkar Taxi in the coming months. While speaking in the Lok Sabha, Home Minister Amit Shah, who also holds the Ministry of Cooperation, said that the profit will go directly to drivers and not to intermediaries. Shilpa joins us now with more. Shilpa, what details do we have on this proposed cab-hailing app that the government is launching?
Well, you know, better earnings and a more equitable ecosystem, that seems to be the idea behind the government's latest announcement of the Sarkar Taxi. Now, this is a cooperative taxi service that aims to create a more fair system for drivers. Unlike Ola and Uber, which charge commissions of 20 to 30%, the government says Sarkar Taxi will ensure that the profits go directly to drivers, so they earn more out of taxi driving. So a zero commission model is what we will likely see. Now, the service will include two-wheeler taxis, auto rickshaws and four-wheelers as well. Now, the rollout is expected to be in the coming months, though exact details has not come from the ministry on what the pricing will be like, what the operations will be like either. Now, currently, if you know, Ola and Uber dominate the market, but the drivers' dissatisfaction has been high. There have been several complaints about differential pricing, long working hours, reduced earnings due to the high commission fees. Now, in response, some states have already launched their own alternatives. West Bengal, for instance, has Yatri Sathi and Karnataka's Namma Yatri. Now, both these government-backed ones operate on a zero commission model. Yatri Sathi was launched in July 2023. It has nearly 89,000 drivers, whereas Namma Yatri, which was first introduced in November 2022, has grown to about 4.2 lakh auto and cab drivers. Now, Sarkar Taxi is expected to follow a similar cooperative model to offer a more viable livelihood to drivers with zero commission. Now, one challenge, however, lies in the ambiguity in the legal framework that governs regulations around two-wheeler taxi services in India. But the larger idea here is for the government to expand India's cooperative movement. Now, the country has seen successful cooperatives in the dairy sector with brands like Amul, KMF, Avin, etc. Now, the government wants to extend this model to transport and even, in fact, insurance. However, while multiple state governments have introduced their own taxi services, none of them have actually seen adoption that is wide enough to truly challenge the dominance of Ola and Uber. So, whether Sarkar Taxi, will be able to break that trend, and how it does that is something that remains to be seen. Back to you.
All right, Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. Also on the show, Indian beauty product consumers' curiosity is pushing India's ingredient-based beauty boom. A detailed report on what consumers are looking for when we return. Catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. The top global stories: both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of breaking the ceasefire a day after agreeing to pause the attacks on energy infrastructure. The planned ceasefire in the Black Sea is in jeopardy. This after the EU refused to agree with Russia's demand to reconnect its state bank to the international payment system. Europe said this would not happen until Russia withdraws from Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russian forces continue to attack Ukraine, launching a mass drone attack on two cities. At least 25 Palestinians have been killed and 82 injured in Israeli attacks carried out across Gaza in the past 24 hours. Hamas has said its spokesman has been killed in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, the Israeli military continued its assault across the occupied West Bank, raiding a town in North Bethlehem. The AI race is heating up in China. Alibaba has launched a new AI model to rival DeepSeek. The new addition to its Qwen series is an end-to-end multimodal AI model. It can process a wide range of inputs, including text, images, audio and videos, while generating real-time text and natural speech responses. As per the company, the model will be useful in developing cost-effective AI agents. The India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement has opened doors for the sale of several premium products in India. However, India has excluded dairy and agriculture-based products from the agreement to protect the interests of local farmers. This move is facing resistance from the US, which is demanding lower tariffs on all products, including agricultural produce. Abhimanyu is here with a deep dive.
We're at the INA market in Delhi, where Australian oranges, avocados, breads and packaged foods are available for sale since more than a year due to the existence of the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. However, these are mostly premium products, as India has traditionally kept dairy and agriculture out of the ambit of free trade agreements to protect the interests of local farmers and businesses. However, this stand is now facing resistance from the United States, which wants lower or zero tariffs on the trade of every product or service, including agriculture, which means everything from apples to wheat. With the American delegation currently in New Delhi to decide on the contours of a proposed bilateral trade agreement, here is what is at stake for India.
India, the agriculture is basically for sustainable purpose. We are not having commercial agriculture, and therefore, when we are talking about the trade, this is not trade happening amongst two equals. And I personally feel that India may not be granting much concession on these products. Even if the concession has to be given, probably we will have some kind of quantitative ceiling so that the goods up to a quantity can be only imported, which is not affecting the farmers or the general public.
While premium products like Washington apples, Californian almonds and pistachios are already available in Indian markets, the US wants increased access for its dairy and cereal preparations, many of which are industrially produced and may end up directly competing with products of small domestic farmers if exempted from all duties. Even at the WTO ministerial in Abu Dhabi last year, India had cited concerns of food security to bat for a permanent solution to public stock holding for food in support of the MSP regime for crops, recalling the vast differences in the actual per-farmer domestic support provided by different countries. India had pointed out that some developed countries end up providing subsidies up to 200 times more than developing countries per capita. This is why India is against giving any concessions to the US on the subsidy policy for Indian farmers.
लोग फॉरेन होके आते हैं तो उनको इंडियन टेस्ट चाहिए होता है, तो वो मतलब फॉरेन टेस्ट चाहिए होता है, तो वो आते हैं इंडिया में, वो बेसिकली चीज चाहते हैं कि यहाँ भी हमें वो चीज मिल जाए.
Lower tariffs may also mean greater export prospects for several Indian products. Except several products which fall under export curbs like rice and onions, the country is focusing on the export of 25 edible products, which include alcoholic beverages, jaggery and confectionery, bananas, mangoes, pomegranates, grapes, watermelons, green chilies, capsicum, potatoes, okra, natural honey, ghee and cereal preparations like sweet biscuits, pappers and dried pasta. So clearly, India wants more access for agri-products too in the US, but there will be red lines on lowering tariffs on products like wheat, maize and dairy. In New Delhi, this is Abhimanyu Sharma for CNBC TV 18.
Now, what's in the skin cream? What makes that moisturizer work? Questions like these, millions of Indians are asking, and they're not happy with vague answers like essence of rose or paste of turmeric or neem oil. Shilpa Ranipeta reports that Indian beauty consumers are actively taking an ingredient-first approach when choosing their skincare products, and manufacturers are rushing to give consumers exactly what they want.
Vico turmeric, nahi cosmetic. Vico turmeric Ayurvedic cream.
Remember this iconic ad? Chances are, if it had to work today, the jingle may have to be changed to Vico curcumin Ayurvedic cream. Because curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric, and that's the kind of information the Indian beauty care consumer is looking for these days. And if the active ingredient is bolstered by real chemistry like retinol, niacinamide, peptides and ceramides, even better. Industry estimates suggest India's dermatological beauty market will reach $34 billion by 2028.
With the advent of the social media and with the advent of the knowledge-based skincare regime, I think people are researching more. It is also seen as a very authentic way of selling. We have seen that a lot of new generation brands which are very, very strong with this ingredient-based storytelling is seeing a lot of traction.
Now that the consumer is getting used to that honesty of X percentage salicylic acid or Y percentage retinol, and I don't think they're ever going to go back.
Beauty brands are going all in to ride this wave. L'Oreal, the world's largest beauty company, brought its dermatological beauty division to India with the launch of CeraVe. And India's largest beauty player, HUL, not only revamped its beauty division to align with this trend, it even shelled out nearly 3,000 crore rupees to acquire Minimalist, a pioneer in science-based skincare in India.
So Minimalist found the gap in transparency in science and being really good on product, because there's a lot of claims out in the market. But if you look at Minimalist, when I speak to the founders, they said whatever be the case, I'm going to make a great product.
New age brands like Dermaco, Foxtail and Allies of Skin say that their strong growth comes from consumers putting their money where the science is, well, clearly visible.
In our first year we did 100, next year we did 200, then I guess 350, and I think this year we'll do anywhere around 480 to 500. So yeah, I think pretty much growing at 80 to 100% year over year.
We were the first ones to launch the Derma company, which is focused on this active trend in 2020, and we've been actually able to scale it to more than 500 crore scale.
The revolution is sweeping through India's $21 billion beauty and personal care market like wildfire. These active ingredients have already moved beyond serums and creams. Brands are today incorporating them into all facets of personal care, be it a foundation or a lipstick or even shower gel and shampoos. The next stage could well be highly personalized products to a person's skin type or their sensitivities. Because in today's day and age, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, but in the active ingredient in that tube or bottle. In Mumbai, Shilpa Ranipeta.
With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here, thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned. The news will continue on CNBC TV 18.